What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and it is another Friday, so you know what that means. It is another Project Black Flag Friday, which I will promise to get better at saying. I have been lied to by a bunch of silly kobolds, and I was supposed to have a black flag that I could hoist and wave around, but it didn't arrive yet, although it was supposed to go out last weekend, so hopefully soon I'll have said flag, and then I'll actually have something to wave around. That being said, let's talk about what's going on with this. This is Design Diary number 1. If you missed out earlier in the week on Monday, Cobalt Press released the playtest information for Project Black Flag. It was basically lineages and heritage, so essentially building your character, but not going into things like classes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the design diary here. Now, there's been a lot of comments and things, and I'll address some of those in a second, but let's go ahead and see what we've got here. So I'm going to zoom in because this looks a little harder to see. Playtest packet number 1 went out. Lots of questions. We asked our senior game designer, Celeste Conwich, to reveal her thoughts in a design diary. Look at this as a monthly feature during playtesting. All right, what are we doing here? My name is Celeste Conowich. I'm Cobalt Press's senior game designer, and I wanted to give you all some frank updates on what's happening with the design of Project Black Flag. What is the point? In the hustle and bustle of an exciting new project, we have heard that you want to know the point of it all. Why make a 5e clone? Why not tear up all the previous 5e projects and start from scratch? Why? This is all things that I want to know, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen this. I've been trying to schedule time with Celeste to do an interview, and that hasn't happened yet, so hopefully soon. But I'm reading this with fresh eyes with all of you. I should also point out, in case anybody was wondering, I'm not sponsored by Cobalt Press in any capacity. I'm just passionate about their products. I have a lot of friends that work there, so is there a degree of bias? Yes. But I'm also going to call them out on their bullshit. So let's see what we got. It's time for Monopoly on D&D to end. This is a wildly exciting time to make TTRPGs as we stare down the possibility of an RPG future not ruled by one master game under the control of one master company. The Lord of the Rings taught us that this is bad. One of our wise team members said something that I think about almost daily. This game has meant too much to us for too long to let it remain owned by just one company. And they're right. I love D&D. I've played every edition, bought hundreds of books, and my fondest memories are built on this game. I would go so far to say if it were not for D&D, I don't know if I would be here today. I know Celeste very well, and we've played a lot of D&D together and made a lot of fun memories, just us and our group of friends. So I very much feel the same way about this. You would not be watching Nerd Immersion in the version that you see now here on YouTube was it not for Dungeons and Dragons. I wouldn't be here. I'm not ready to give it up or let its future be controlled by a single company. We know many of you feel the same way. That's why we're keeping all of the good of 5e alive, and to make it better. That's why we're raising the flag to declare that we will be here to keep the candle burning no matter what shareholders plan in some distant tower, aka Wizards of the Coast office in Washington. We want 5.5e, not 1D&D. 5e rocks. It's the best edition of the game ever made. Though, as with any game, there's room for improvements. 5e has been going for a long time in the life cycle of RPGs, and it's time to make some corrections. But I don't want to toss the baby out with the bathwater. I don't feel great about what I've seen and speculated about for 1D&D so far. I seriously doubt that 1D&D can fulfill the promise of true backwards compatibility. I could be wrong, of course. I hope I'm wrong. But it's safe to say the community has learned a lot this year, and it would be foolish to forget. Rather than wait for an uncertain future to unfold, why not make the upgrades we all want to see? Cobalt Press doesn't want to wait. The project is taking on the issues we can fix without invalidating the thousands of dollars we've spent on some really killer 5e products. It's an extremely difficult needle to thread? Yes. Or is that? Will it be perfect? Probably not. Is it worth trying? Hell yeah. So I'm going to stop reading and talk to you for a second here because I've seen the comments. I want you to know. I have seen your comments. A lot of you are saying that because they're just making a 5e clone or a 5.5 or something like that, you're not interested. And I'll be honest, to a degree, I see your point, and I kind of agree. Before we had 5e going into Creative Commons, which kind of gave us the idea that going forward, we're still going to have access to things like the SRD 5.1. And this, there'd been a lot of rumblings and rumors for years, basically almost a full year, that something was happening to the OGL or was going to happen, which is why this project was able to go underway and was started in the summer of last year in preparation for what happened. There had been those rumors, but unfortunately, until December/January, they were just that, rumors. Am I curious to see what Cobalt Press would have done had they not had the ability to continue to produce sort of a 5.5e? Yes. I am very curious as to what Project Black Flag would have looked like had we not had the SRD 5.1 dumped into Creative Commons. I do think we'd be in a different spot, although I think the spirit of it would have been the same. The concept was make a core fantasy system that would have been the easiest transition for you to go from 5e to Project Black Flag. While I do have a bunch of other RPGs, and I do still plan to continue to cover those as I have been, and Pathfinder is a similar enough RPG that a lot of the elements may remain the same, Pathfinder is divergent enough from D&D, whereas I felt like Project Black Flag was going to be the closest thing you could have to 5th edition without being, copyright close enough to be, legal action taken against you if we ended up in the true OGL 1.1, 1.2 scenario. That being said, from a business standpoint, this is the smartest move on Cobalt Press's part. Regardless of how you feel about it, they have produced maybe not hundreds, but they've produced dozens of 5e related content books from things like the Tome of Beasts series, the variety of different adventures, the Midgard guides, their campaign setting, all that stuff. It exists, it's out there, and it's designed for 5e. If you were to just scrap and go with a 100% new system not tied in any way, shape, or form to 5e, you're invalidating your entire backlog of stuff, the stuff that built up Cobalt Press's reputation in many, many players' minds. So the business standpoint here makes sense. If you make all of whatever you're designing sort of an evolution of 5th edition that is 100% truly backwards compatible, and I do believe that, that doesn't invalidate all the Cobalt Press things. You wouldn't have to buy Tome of Beasts 1.1, which is the updated version for Project Black Flag. You can still use all the Cobalt Press books you've already invested in, and realistically, any other third-party books you've also invested in with small tweaks here and there based on what you see here. So that makes sense to me business-wise, and I get it. Although it's not necessarily what everybody wanted, this to me seems like it will most likely end up being the 5.5. Whether or not one D&D is 5.5, this might be your 5.75. This will be your Pathfinder to D&D 3.5, if that makes sense, where it's like taking what worked and what was well designed about the base system and iterating on it to make a slightly better, more balanced, more adjusted version. And I'll be honest, I think 5th edition is a great system for what it is, right? We all know that there are better systems out there to do certain things, right? You want to play, a pulp kind of sanity-based system, you go to Call of Cthulhu. You want to do sort of all roguish-based stuff, you go with Blades in the Dark. But for what a fantasy kind of base role-playing is for something like 5th edition and Dungeons & Dragons, that kind of experience, 5th edition is a really great system for that. And you had, regardless of how you feel about some of the people involved, the team that designed the base 5th edition rules is a ton of really smart, really good designers that put that together. So why throw out all of that good design in favor of making something new for the purposes of making something new? If you can take what's already there and fix what's broken to make it better, that seems the most sense. I mean, hell, some of the most popular stuff I've done on this channel in recent years was my Fixing 5e series, where I would go and take a look at something that was out in 5th edition that I thought was broken or needed adjusting, and then I would fix it. And those videos garnered tons of views and a ton of comments and drew a lot of people to the channel because they're like, oh yeah, the Battle Rager Barbarian from Sword Coast Adventures Guide was pretty crap, but I was like, well, we could fix it, make it better. The 4 Elements Monk, the Purple Dragon Knight. I did all this stuff, and it did well because people were like, I still like 5e, but I would like things to be better. Now, that was obviously before the OGL, so if you've left 5e entirely and aren't coming back, I totally get it. But if you still like 5e enough and want to support a company that is not Wizards of the Coast, but still play a game system that you're familiar with and that you like, but an iterative, better version of it, that seems to be what Black Flag is going to be. And again, there's been one playtest, so take that with a grain of salt. They're going to iterate on that. So if you have issues with what was released in the playtest packet, say that when the survey goes live. All right, back to this. Wait, what are you changing? You heard me. We're changing the stuff that needs to be changed and doing it in a way that respects your current 5e library and keeps it useful. That's what we mean when we say the mystic words backwards compatible. Our goal is to change stuff and then give you clear instructions to help you keep using your current 5e material that might no longer be a perfect fit with the well-needed changes. We're also trying to do that in a way that won't make PCs or GMs want to cry in frustration. Those are all some big asks, but we're trying to do it all anyway, because you, a fellow D&D lover, deserve to have it all. And that's basically exactly what I was saying, right? If there's not a direct correlation, you release a guidance document that says this translates to this, and it also won't make you, like, if you wanted to convert your current 5e character for your current campaign to Project Black Flag, here's how you do it without having to rip your hair out. How Black Flag gives 5e power to the people. We've heard people say, but why? The SRD is in Creative Commons now. We invite you to relook at the SRD and note just how much beloved 5e is not in the SRD, which is true. Do you want to just play a champion fighter until the end of time? Neither do we. Here's a list of things other Kobold designers and I are creating as replacements for the great core rulebook bits that we all wish were in the SRD. Alternatives for the player's handbook subclasses missing from the SRD. Reimagining the feats missing from the SRD as talents. Spoiler alert, it's all of them except Grappler. By the way, yes, if you haven't learned that, the SRD 5.1 includes one feat, and it's Grappler. And the only reason it includes one feat is because it gives you the framework of this is how a feat is and this is how a feat works. Here's one example. Go make all of your own. Lore text for every monster in the SRD, only stat blocks are in the SRD, which is also true. If you look at that, for the monster section, it is just stat blocks with no information. So, like, what is an owlbear or what is a dragon? It doesn't tell you. It just gives you a stat block. So this is now giving you lore to make it unique and interesting. And again, yeah, you have one subclass for every class in the SRD. And the reason why is it provides you the framework of how a subclass works so that you can go make your own. So yeah, it's like, it's Berserker Barbarian, Champion Fighter, I think Life Domain Cleric, right? That's all you get. You have to make your own other subclasses, so they're working on alternate versions of that. So you could continue to play in a open source, non-Wizards of the Coast owned 5th edition with all of the things you know and love from what you have in your base 5e library from your core rulebook set, but being not owned by WotC. Playtest packet number 1. Here's what we did. All right, let's get into it. Here are some of the changes I took a stab at in playtest packet number 1, and we'll continue to develop in our quest to make 5e even better, more/better/shinier. Streamlined presentation of information. Generally, the core fantasy role-playing approach is to use more straightforward language, reduce complexity, and organize information in a more user-friendly way than the 5e core rulebooks do. This style of presentation favors the use of examples and standout advice to help new players. Lineage/heritage no longer grants an ability score increase. A PC's choice of lineage, heritage, and background, personal proclivities, profession, etc. no longer influences starting ability scores. A PC determines their starting ability scores during the determine ability score step of character creation. We've cut the unnecessary additional task of raising or lowering them during 2 other entirely different steps of character creation. And I understand this. We've actually seen this change with what they're doing in 1D&D, and some of you have even brought this up to me that it's in Pathfinder. I think in 1D&D, your background gives you your ability score improvements, whereas here in Black Flag, it's part of rolling your stats that you roll them and then something gets bumped, which means you won't run into a situation where something like a halfling gets more ability score improvements than a human, or a regular elf, or the kobold gets almost nothing, right, comparatively, or you don't have negative ability scores either. PCs now choose a lineage and heritage. During character creation, a player chooses their character's lineage, which grants biological features. Lineage traits includes things like special senses, size, and movement speed. They also choose their character's heritage, which grants learned features called heritage traits. Heritage traits include things like language and equipment proficiencies. While heritage options are nested under the lineage they are most commonly paired with, a player can choose any heritage for their character, even from those nested under a different lineage. The ability to mix and match allows characters to create custom backstories, such as having parents of different lineages or being raised in an adoptive society, right? If you wanted to be a human who was raised by fire-forged dwarves, you will be a human with fire resistance. And I actually had a discussion about this last night after my Great Modron March campaign session, was we are all so used to something like fire resistance, for example, being an inborn biological feature, as in though your skin is what gives you the fire resistance, when in actuality, it could just be a learned thing of you spending so much time in high heat areas that you've learned your body has grown to adapt to that. It's not necessarily that you're taking less damage because your skin is hardened against fire, but your body may be able to deal with high heat better, things like that. Introducing the talent system. Feats have been eliminated in favor of a new talent system. On top of allowing us to create better versions of all the feats that are not in the SRD, which again is all of them except Grappler, we have some global improvements as well. Here's how talents work versus how feats work. Talents are not an optional rule. They are a core part of the game. This was not true for 5e, which if you look at the base rules of 5e is in fact a truthful statement. Talents are divided into 3 categories: martial, magic, and technical. Each class is tied to one of the 3 talent categories. Characters that gain a talent for their improvement must choose it from the list that matches their class talent list, right? So martial would be your fightery types, magic would be your magic users, and technical, I read this originally as technological. Technical is things like your skill monkeys, your bards, your rogues. Every background grants a talent during character creation. Again, this is kind of the genesis we've seen with 5th edition in general, base 5e, as well as with 1D&D. The background gives you basically a feat now, or the equivalency of what a lot of us were doing for a long time, a feat at first level. Reworking backgrounds. The traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws table have been removed from backgrounds. They have been replaced with a single adventuring motivation table that encourages players to look forward instead of backward when creating character narratives. Let's reclaim all that page space eaten up by lackluster tables, shall we? Looking forward. What is the Cobalt Press design team working on? If we've heard anything loud and clear from playtest packet number 1, feedback so far is we want more and we want it now. That's awesome. We want to give it to you all right now, but we can't. We have to be sad, just like you, and roll it out in bite-sized playtest pieces. I think we can all agree that this is another instance of why being a non-variant human is the worst. But we can give you a list of big-picture goals that we're working towards to make this game even better. Make the rules easier to read and understand. That's true. I've never really found that 5th edition rules were that difficult. I can tell you from reading other RPGs, some of them can get very technical, and the presentation makes it almost impossible to fully understand things, so you rely on somebody else who's played the game to explain it to you. Provide tools to reduce GM burden, encounter building tools, exploration encounter tools, social encounter tools, etc. Rebalance a whole lot of existing junk, especially feats and classes. Provide opportunities for PCs to make meaningful choices at higher levels. Make spellcasting feel cooler. So there you have it. A design diary full of hope, big dreams, and frank explanations. Before I sign off here, I want to say thank you. In the midst of this major undertaking, you have reminded us that we need to stop for a minute and explain what the heck we're doing. Explain where the heck we're going. Either way, you know what I'm saying. We heard you, and you are so right. Again, you deserve it all, so I can't wait to share more with you when that next packet drops. Until then, happy rolling, Celeste Konowich, Senior Game Designer. So, this is good. You know what this is? This is transparency, and it's an answer within a 5-day time period, not a whole week of silence, and then a throwaway we won and we both won kind of a scenario. So, this, I also know the kobolds pretty well, a lot of them, right, all the way up to Wolfgang, and they're awesome people, and they are willing to make things that fans want. So if people are truthful and honest in their feedbacks on their feedback surveys about what they liked and didn't like from the playtest packets, I think that'll get taken to heart. So make sure when it goes live that you provide your feedback. I'll be doing a survey fill out like I always do. And I'm very curious. I'm hoping, like I said, I can get Celeste to sit down and do an interview. I would actually love to do it live, but that's probably a little harder to schedule where we do a live stream. We can take questions from you live in the chat. That would be something I'd love to do. But even if it has to be an interview that is pre-recorded and I take your questions in advance, that's an option as well. But yeah, I'd love to get some more information because a lot of you may also be curious about who Celeste is, what she's done to get her to this point, that kind of a thing. I do feel like there's a lot to take away from this particular article, as to why things are being done the way they're done. And I think I did a good job of explaining it, but 5e is a good system. Why throw the entirety of it out to make something new for the purposes of make something new if you can just fix what's broken? And yeah, I mean, I can't promise that I'll ever get pulled in to work on any of this stuff, but I'm here to help, right? I've been doing this stuff for a while, and there's definitely some parts of 5e that could definitely get fixed and be tweaked and improved. So let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and I will see you all next time.